Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the film Hurry Up Tomorrow, directed by Trey Shults. This is a strange film. I didn't know what to expect. I knew that it featured the music of The Weeknd, and on the one hand it is like an elaborate high-budget music video, a vehicle for The Weeknd's latest album. But on the other hand it clearly wants to be something more. Something perhaps Lynchian, fragmented, dreamlike, symbolic. It reaches for psychological depth and existential ambiguity. At times I did feel that it might be going somewhere interesting. There is a lot of ambiguity. You never quite know where you stand, who people are to each other, what's real and what's a dream. I went along with the ambiguity the way I might with a Lynch film, trusting that a deeper emotional logic would reveal itself. In the end, I do think it's more a pop-star vanity project than an art house mood piece. I was disappointed with it in the end. Hurry Up Tomorrow is a film that's like a hazy dream. It is stylish. It's an emotionally disjointed story of a pop star slowly falling apart. The result is a moody, frustrating work that walks a fine line between bold artistic risk and self-indulgence. Let's start with a positive. Visually and sound-wise, the film has real presence. It's rich in atmosphere. I loved the orchestral, operatic synths. The sound design is often superb. This works really well and does create a very uncertain and unsettling atmosphere. But I'm confused about who the pop star is in the film. He's called Abel Tesfaye in the film, which is a fictional character, i.e. not The Weeknd, but then we see a glimpse of a newspaper article where he is called The Weeknd. Of course, it's potentially interesting to explore the space between reality and fiction, for that to be blurred, but I don't think that the film did explore this in an interesting way in the end. The Weeknd's music draws heavily from 1980s musical references, and the music for this film is no different. Sometimes perhaps it feels a bit too derivative. I don't know his music well enough to really comment on this. The main track in the film, Wake Up, really sounds like Michael Jackson's Thriller though. One sample that I didn't get was the music from Scarface. We hear Tony's theme clearly, and in fact Giorgio Moroder, who created the music for Scarface, is explicitly credited. For all the elegance of those amazing synths, it's hard to understand what that reference is doing here. It doesn't seem to serve the character or deepen the themes. There's no clear link between Hurry Up Tomorrow and Scarface. No narrative overlap, no symbolic resonance. It feels less like homage and more like an aesthetic flex. Cool, yes, but empty. The Weeknd's performance is solid, I thought. It's a complex part to play. He plays the emotional unravelling convincingly with a flatness that suits the character's alienation. But the entire project circles around him in a way that feels self-referential to the point of exhaustion. Officially, this is a Weeknd album, yet in the film, as I mentioned, the songs are presented as if they belong to the character he's playing. He's not exactly The Weeknd, but not someone else either. It's deliberately blurred. And for me, that blurring does not enrich the experience. It makes it more self-indulgent. It's him, but he's pretending that it isn't. There's no creative distance to reveal the weight of self-importance. The film does rely heavily on the music, much more than dialogue. Perhaps if you love his music, this works well. For me, it felt like it made it emotionally shallow. Characters rarely speak meaningfully to one another. Scenes bleed into each other like music videos, visually stylish, but dramatically weightless. Dream sequences abound, but without the unsettling symbolism or psychological layering of a David Lynch film. This is not Mulholland Drive, it's more like a musical video that's trying to be existential. The aspect ratio changes are a good example of this problem. They're frequent, attention-grabbing, and ultimately gimmicky. They don't seem to signal anything meaningful. Rather than deepening the dream logic for me, they became a distraction. Jenna Ortega plays Anima, a mysterious, symbolic presence who kind of floats through the narrative. At first her story is completely detached from his. We switch between the two. They have very different tones, so this was kind of intriguing at first. It is a good performance by Ortega, I thought. Compelling to watch. We're unsure of how she relates to Abel. We make assumptions that may or may not be true. I quite liked how this worked initially. Barry Keoghan, meanwhile, is almost entirely wasted. For an actor of his talent, unpredictability and intensity, the film gives him surprisingly little to do. It feels like he's there for texture, not substance. One of the strangest things about Hurry Up Tomorrow is how slippery it is. You never quite know where you stand, who people are to each other, what's real, what's a dream. I went along with the ambiguity the way I might with a Lynch film, trusting that emotional logic would reveal itself, but the ending simply doesn't deliver. The final scene is a long surreal sequence in which Anima has Abel tied to a bed while she dances to his music. It feels like it should be symbolic, cathartic, disturbing, but it just sits there, stylised, yes, but empty. I suspended disbelief, but the film didn't deliver by the end. There's an irony here that deserves mention. When I saw the recent Robbie Williams film Better Man, where he was portrayed by a monkey, I had a theory. The monkey saved the film. It created distance, absurdity, even honesty. If Williams had played itself, it would have been insufferable. Hurry Up Tomorrow proves that theory, I think. Without that creative distance, the film collapses into a kind of curated vulnerability, stylised suffering presented as revelation. In the end, it felt really self-indulgent. Maybe fans of The Weeknd will love this insight into his psyche. I found it somewhat tedious. All that said, it's not a disaster. This is an interestingly made movie. It's ambitious, it's not boring. At the same time, unfortunately, I didn't find it as profound as it thinks it is. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.